we are going through an introduction to ArchiCAD. I'm just launching the software here. I am working within ArchiCAD 23 and I do operate it with a student license. ArchiCAD is issued by Graphisoft, so have a look or maybe Google and find your local distributor of the software. That's where you can download the software packages, and usually you should be able to sign up with your student credentials, giving you free access to the entire software package, which is really generous and an amazing way to get started with CAD drawings in general. So once you launch the software, that first window will show up where you can either relaunch some of the previous projects that you have worked on. You can browse for one here in that middle tab, or you can create a new one, which we will do now here. So just press on that button. There's a small info window that you press on, just indicating that you're working in a student license, and then it asks you what kind of template that you would like to use. Assuming that you haven't set up your own templates or anything, you can just leave everything as is. Profile as well, use the one that prompts you. Yours might say default profile, which is perfectly fine, or just simply the last profile that you've used. So that's all good. We'll just click on new, and that will create a new template or a new project for you. Just give it a little bit of time. One of the things that we will notice straight away is that template that's provided by ArchiCAD, I personally find it a bit too overwhelming. There's a bit too much presets on there already. So as you go through that introduction, I will delete a lot of these presets, and I actually prefer to build my own presets. That's also a good introduction for you to see how to do these sort of things. You are more than welcome to join me in doing that, but you can also just leave all the presets and the template as is if you're comfortable with working in that way. Once you get a bit more comfortable with the software in general and you know your ways around, I highly recommend setting up not necessarily a template, but a master file. So having one file, you can call it the ArchiCAD 23 master file, save it somewhere on your desktop. So whenever you do start a new project, you don't just start from scratch, but you can work with that master file. And in there, it's really good to set up the tools and settings and layers the way that you like them to be. And you might even be able to copy in a few elements and symbols and small drawings like furniture and these sort of things that you like to work with. And you can copy them into that document so you have easy access to these elements all the time. So just to give you a brief overview of the navigation and the things that are available to us. On the left hand side we have all the different tools. Mostly on the top it's these architectural tools, things like walls, stairs, roofs, furniture or objects in general. And then here below the document tools, so things like dimensions, a few 2D tools like line tools, areas, text, all these sort of things. We will go through them as we need them and as we use them within these videos. And then on the bottom there's a bit more specific things, a bit more like 3D tools like a camera or a lamp tool, these sort of things. Whenever you select one of the tools, you're actually ready to draw or use them within the canvas, or you can just press escape and it will automatically switch back to the arrow tool, which lets you select elements on the canvas as well. As I have said before, these presets like these view elevation viewers, I don't like them. I'll just delete them. Delete viewpoint, yes, delete anyways. We don't need them at the moment. When you select one of these tools, you will notice that on the top here, on this tool setting bar, a lot of extra information pops up, and that information changes depending on which kind of tool that you have selected. When you scroll to the right, you can see that there's actually much more available. You can actually preset certain things within that bar already before you even start to draw, or you can also just draw with whatever that is set up at the moment. Let's have a look at the really basic shape, and then once you select these tools again, these information will pop up again. So you can now, after you've drawn something, you can always manipulate all that information. Another way to do it, and that's what I do most often, is that I use the shortcut Command and T, which will then open a wall selection settings and an additional window. I think it's a bit more elaborate than what the information would be in that top bar. At least it's a bit more, it gives you an easier overview. And here you have all that information. You can change everything again. And once you've changed something, you can just press OK. So one of the things that for instance, we can change, as a default, ArchiCAD was thinking that I'm drawing a wall as a compound wall, meaning it has multiple layers. But in the beginning, when we are designing, we might not even know what our construction is going to look like. So I prefer to draw just simple walls without any layers, just to keep it simple on the one hand. And I'd like to build up my designs from the basics and then add on information as I go and as I learn more about the structure as well. It now gives you the option to change the material. We can just assume something. Let's assume we have a brick wall. We choose that one. And then on here, on the bottom, you can also define the width of your project, of your element. So let's assume it's twice as thick. We will have a closer look at these dimensions and everything a bit later on, just giving you a brief overview. You can press OK and you can see all these changes have been assigned to the drawing. Another thing that we can see up here, that drawing canvas has multiple tabs. By default, ArchiCAD opens these, which is the Action Center. I barely ever use it, I'll just close it, I don't need it. Keep an eye on these tabs. The more you have open, the slower your software might become. So closing the ones that you don't actively use is always a good idea. The 3D view, here again, we don't need it at the moment, so we'll just close it. And then lastly, there's also a layout view. Because that template has all of these sort of things already set up, it automatically places the ground plan onto a layout which it calls A102, ground floor plan. We don't need that at this point of time, so we'll close that as well, and we are back on our ground plan. Then lastly, on the top, there's some more general tools or settings that are more applicable to the entire canvas rather than to a specific tool. And then here on the side, and that will become very important as we go forward, is the navigation box. So that's the navigation throughout your entire project, throughout your entire building. So the first one is called, I want to say it's called, yes, project map. You can see there's heaps of information. We will have a closer look at that in a moment. The second one is, we just hover over it, it should show up. I'm not quite sure how they call them. You have the project map, view map, layout book is the next one, and then the publisher. I think it's simply called publisher. Publisher sets, there it is, yes. That's a really important tool to understand, and it's one of the things I find a little bit frustrating when you're starting off, as it is not as intuitive to understand, and we will dedicate a specific video on how to use the navigator in general. On the bottom we also have some drawing information showing you what scale that you're working on at the moment. So we are 1 to 50. If you do zoom in and if we are changing that scale, our hatchings and line width and everything will change accordingly. So whenever you are drawing something, make sure that you're drawing it at the right scale, because as you can see, these line weights are different. The hatching has a different line weight as does the cut line have. So, and these ones are adaptive to the specific scales. And that's something that you should learn how to do. It's a standard within architectural orthographic representation, so it's very important to pay attention to these sort of things. And then here it's also the orientation. If we do zoom out, let's assume that's our building. That would indicate that the top side is north, east, south and west. You can certainly turn that around. There's a little icon over here. You can just press on it. And also that bottom bar gives you some indication on how to navigate this. So enter rotation center point. I want to press on that corner, and then it says enter rotation arc start point, and you can turn that around. So your entire canvas, and you can see with that tiny icon, has now changed by 17.76 degrees. If you click on here, you can actually revert that back to 0 degrees. That becomes really important if you do have, let's assume you have a building that is not exactly oriented north-south. And now if you have to start drawing these walls on the interiors, it becomes quite a bit annoying because you always have to draw them at a certain angle. Not very fun to do, and you might accidentally have, like, you know, slightly tilted walls. You can see in that tiny little info box, it says your angle is now at 92.5%. Looks close enough as if it's a right angle, but it's not. So it's really, really annoying. That's where it becomes really handy, and you can actually rotate the view as you would want to draw it. So again, having it slightly tilted, and now you can draw your walls, and it's much, much easier. So yes, when you set up a project, make sure that you orient it the way that the project will be. So please assume that when your document is set up to 0 degrees, that is north, east, south and west, and then change it at the next step. We'll just delete that for now, as it's a bit annoying as well. And lastly, you can see there's a tiny X here on the bottom. That one is the origin point of the document. So there's an invisible grid behind, and that one is 0, 0 within your axis system. Make sure that your main drawing is somewhere close by to that origin point. If it's too far away, one of the things that sometimes happen when you export a 3D file, your 3D model of the building, and import it into another software, that software might be calculating every single point of your geometry based on that origin point. And if these numbers are getting quite big, it takes a lot of time for the 3D element to render, and sometimes it might even mess up the geometry of your building. And that's a bit annoying if you've put in a lot of work and then you all of a sudden realize that you've positioned it too far away from the origin point. So make it a habit, put it as close by as possible, saves you a lot of hassles at the end. So that's it for that brief introduction to the main features, so like the navigation within ArchiCAD, and we will have a look at some of the tools in the next few videos. Thank you.